back to Israel. Our next guest is not only one of the most important figures in Israel innovation ever, but also one of the people who truly use technology for a better world. Professor Amnon Shashua is the founder and CTO of MOBILEYE, which developed advanced driver assist systems and has had a significant impact on lowering the number of severity of road traffic accidents in the world. The second company he founded, Orcam, is making a huge contribution to humanity by developing glasses for the visually impaired, which enable them to see. In addition to all this, Amnon Shashua is also a professor at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and a senior vice president at Intel Corporation. Amnon Shashua, please come on to the stage. So, Professor Shashua, thanks for coming.
Thank you, Dror.
Today's summit focuses on innovation for a better world. What do you think are the greatest challenges facing humanity today?
Well, I think that the big problems facing humanity are constant. They haven't changed for a while. It is curing disease, it is increasing longevity and the quality of life. It's access to natural resources or compensating for the lack of natural resources, and it's energy, abundance of energy. Really, the question is, what is different today than, say, 10 years ago when thinking about how technology can help? And I would say the difference is computing. We are talking about a revolution that has been gradually unfolding in the last 3 decades, from PCs to internet, to social networks, to Internet of Things, to AI, machine learning, and algorithms. The computer is, I would say, gradually shifting from a tool to a companion. A tool is something that will do what you tell it to do, and a companion is a brain. It's a brain that thinks with you, gives you feedback, keeps you company. And this transformation from tool to companion is coming upon us. It will take a decade or two. But once it is completed, it opens possibilities that even today we cannot imagine. Okay? And the challenge is to involve ethics. While we're developing this amazing technology, is to involve ethics. It's not that, the danger is not that one day all computers will gang up on us and replace us. The danger is humanity exploiting the dark side of technology. And while developing ethics together with the development of technology could make sure that we flourish with this new thing.
Yeah, I guess you probably watched those videos of those freaking robots by Boston Dynamics. You know these guys?
Oh yeah,
they jump over stuff.
Amazing technology.
Amazing, right? So you look at it, you think, wow, this is so amazing how they do that. And the next thought that jumps into your mind is, wait, maybe this robot's kids will be chasing my kids like 30 years from now, right?
Well, you know, the humanoid robots is an amazing technology. It's not clear what yet to do with it.
Yeah, and I'm referring to ethics, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
What is it to do with it? And that also reflects to any other technology, right? AI, whatever have you.
No, I think that when I talk about ethics of AI, the dark side is really dark. It is using technology to control population, to manipulate population, risk, kill democracy. I'm talking about big things, not humanoid robots scaring people.
And where do you think we're going?
Well, I think the next big step is going from the kind of artificial intelligence we have today. The kind of artificial intelligence we have today, let's call it narrow AI. These are programs, very impressive programs, but are very narrowly defined. They can play games, they can translate voice to text, like the Siri that we have in our phone. They can do pattern recognition. Very, very impressive stuff, but very narrowly defined. The next step, or the next leap, let's call it, is going from AI to what is called AGI, artificial general intelligence, trying to capture the essence of a broader intelligence. So I'll give you an example. There is no computer today that can read a book, let's assume, let's take a complicated book like the Game of Thrones or War and Peace, where you have a very complex virtual world, and then answer probing questions like what is the plot, what are the subplots, what are the actors doing, why are they doing what they are doing, and why is it interesting to begin with. In order to answer these probing questions, you have to develop a sense of common sense, of intelligence, because you need to understand this very, very complex virtual world. There's no AI today that can do something like this, but it's not science fiction. I believe that within a decade, we can do that, and that will be the first step for the AGI and the first step for having a computer become a companion.
And how do you link that with solving the major challenges of humanity?
Well, the way to view broad AI is, let's connect it to the previous talk that you had. Assume that you had well-intentioned aliens, but very, very advanced aliens come to Earth. So they don't have that well-intentioned, and they're much, much more smarter and brighter than us. Then we go to them and we tell them, look, we have cancer, we have AIDS, we have economic inequality, we have lack of resources, precious metals are becoming scarce, energy issues. Give us an advice. This is the impact of AI. This is the impact of AI if developed well. This is the big thing.
I somehow believe that if you ask them that question, they will immediately blast us all.
I said well-intentioned.
Here's a solution. We're gonna focus on autonomous vehicle a little bit, but before that, let's say you have solved that. Okay, you have solved autonomous vehicle. What is the next challenge that you care about the most? I mean, where would you put your time next?
Well, first of all, solving autonomous vehicles is easy to say.
Right. No, we will be that in a second.
Yeah, I think it's more complicated than landing on the moon. Okay, but let's assume that we solve autonomous vehicles. The next, I think, big thing is having intelligence that is wearable on us. Wearable intelligence. As we roam the world, if there's another pair of eyes, another pair of brains that continuously accompany us, that could be a big game changer. The next big thing is health.
Yes.
This is the digital health. This is an area that I think has lots of promise. Again, curing disease. I think computing is a game changer in digital health, in the ability to cure disease. Then there is autonomous avionics, which is also a big game changer. And the biggest game changer is to develop AGI. This is where I would like to focus.
Okay, so let's move back to the work you've done in the few recent years. You're responsible for one of the most important and indeed groundbreaking technologies today, not just in Israeli high-tech, but globally. MOBILEYE is the key player in autonomous vehicle revolution, and like many groundbreaking technologies, one must also look at the ethical aspects of them. You mentioned that. So how do you think we should approach that? What will be a driverless world? What would a driverless world look like? And how will it affect humanity?
Well, when you talk about autonomous driving, people mostly focus on the technology for making it work. But actually, there is another blind spot, which if we do not solve it, there will not be any autonomous cars. And this is the issue of, I would call it regulatory science. And I emphasize science. It's a new domain in which law, regulation, and mathematics should come together. And I'll give you an example. In tort law, there is what is called duty of care. It says that if you are involved in a business that could harm people, you should exercise care. What does it mean to exercise care is open for interpretation. This is why we have lawyers and judges and so forth. Every law is open for interpretation. But when you talk about machines, you cannot leave it open for interpretation. A machine, which is a driverless car, needs to make actions. Those actions could potentially kill people. So what does it mean to have a duty of care for machines? Now, this is not just a legal issue. It's also a mathematical issue, because you need to develop an interpretation that, on one hand, complies with the common sense of human driving. On the other hand, is useful. It means it can allow for agile driving. For example, when I change lane, I can make an assumption, which is a very legal assumption, that my motion does not affect the motion of anyone else, so they should not slow down. That's a legal interpretation, but it's not useful, because here in Israel, you'll never be able to change lane. Right? You have to wait until, assume that others would slow down. So you need an interpretation that applies to common sense, is useful, and also efficiently verifiable from a mathematical point of view. That means you need to prove that the way you implement it in your machine complies with the interpretation. So it's really so it has to conform to inductive principles. So it's really serious mathematics together with an attempt to codify a law. Without doing that, autonomous driving will remain a science project. Yeah. You know, a few tens of cars just showing demonstrations, because no one will dare taking the risk of liability that his AI car would, God forbid, kill someone. What are you going to do? So this is an area that we're putting a lot of focus at Intel and MOBILEYE, developing those mathematical models, developing the regulatory science, working with regulatory bodies across the globe. In Israel, I believe that Israel will also lead that area. We're working with regulatory bodies in Israel to lead. So Israel will not only lead technology, will also lead deployment. So this is a big thing, the ethics.
Yeah, now I understand that adjusting such a product to Israel would necessarily mean like installing a software that tells my car to keep no larger than 1 inch distance from the car in front of me, right? Because if the distance is larger, someone will sneak in.
Well, there is a common sense of driving. So, you know, we have a test car driving in Jerusalem. And Jerusalem is an ideal place because it's not as crazy as other places, maybe India or Asian countries. It's similar to the culture of France and Italy. It's much more assertive than many areas in the US. So it's a good sweet spot. If you succeed in driving in an agile and safe manner in Jerusalem, you have a big market. And you know, when you drive in the car, we have a test. We call it the AV Turing test.
Yeah.
A person in the back seat at the end of the ride should say whether the car was driven by a human or by the machine. And it's quite difficult. It's quite difficult. It drives very, very well.
I want my hand to be put on this knob, this button that can tweak assertiveness of my driving, right? Maximum 11.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. Okay, let's move on forward. Academic year has just opened in Israel. The academic year, and one of the key technologist leaders in the country, you're also a senior and active academic leader. How do you see the role of academia in maintaining and improving Israel innovation?
Well, this is complex. So I think strong universities, provide depth to technology. Technology is application of science. Without science, you don't have technology. There are many countries that have an entrepreneurial spirit, but they don't have the depth of science, so they do not become a startup nation. Israel is blessed by having very, very strong universities, and that provides science. On the other hand, I think universities are really challenged to keep up with the modern world. The role of the universities, they have two roles. One is curating knowledge, and the other one is being an exploratory arm for society. The idea of exploratory arm has been sustained for the past centuries. The idea is that you take a bunch of very, very clever people, you give them salary for life, tell them do whatever you like to do. 99% of them will go nowhere. 1% will discover something new. That's the idea of exploration, and this is what universities have been doing for society. But this is exactly what high-tech is doing for society. You have thousands of companies, 90% of them die, 99% of them don't get nowhere, 1%, becomes a checkpoint, okay? And so the high-tech...
Hello, Mr. Shwed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the high-tech industry is doing for society what universities was supposed to do in the past. So universities need to keep up. Universities need to reinvent themselves in terms of how teaching is being conducted, how research is being conducted. I think it's a big issue that universities are scared to take on. And I think it's the role of the society, the role of the state, to help universities reinvent themselves.
And if we take that forward to collaboration between academia and industry, what is the best way to combine their strengths, I mean, in Israel and also globally?
So I think what you're talking about is tech transfer. I think tech transfer is a national interest. Today, it is left to each university to decide on its policy of tech transfer. And I think there is a lack of a global optimization because, you know, we're talking about public universities. They're funded by the state. So there's a lack of a global optimization. There's a lack of transparency and confusion, especially when you're talking about computer science and electrical engineering. When you're talking about pharmaceutical, I think it's working well. There are good successes, there are good a legacy of tech transfer when you're talking about pharmaceuticals. But when you are venturing into computer science, into electrical engineering, it is really chaotic. And I think the state needs to intervene and come up with a national goals of how tech transfer should be done throughout universities.
It's interesting because we have mileage, we have money in these areas. How come those problems aren't solved?
Well, whenever there is money, there's complications. Okay, so
that's a gentle way to put it.
Let's leave it at that.
Okay. We've now reached the part where we ask all our guests 3 identical questions, and we look forward for your input. You're going to be the first. First question, what will be the next technology to change the world? What's the next game changer?
So I said, you know, autonomous cars, autonomous avionics, wearable AI, and digital health. Those are the big areas.
Is there any new technology to enter your personal life that you are enthusiastic about right now?
Well,
I mean, I don't know, maybe.
You know, my wife says that autonomous driving is a conspiracy. Why is it a conspiracy? That everyone will drive like me. She hates the way I drive, right?
So I need a Professor Shashua button. Yeah. Do this.
Do this. So I think autonomous driving is going to be it's a huge impact. It's going to be a disruption. It's not only the way we move people, the way we own, whether we own cars or not. It's the way cities are going to be designed. Parking lots that you don't need so many parking lots. Pollution, it will be with electric cars rather than gas polluting cars. It's going to be a huge disruption.
But maybe a product that somebody else has produced? Like, do you like Alexa or Tinder or something? No?
Those you think are the big things? No, I don't think. Tinder? No.
Okay. Next, what is there in Israel? What's that thing that makes it startup nation, and how can we preserve it and grow it? You referred to this a little bit.
Okay, so I think what makes it tick, I think so many clever people, you know, have here a lot to say about that. I'll focus on what we should do to make it grow. And I think there are sectors in the society that are not well integrated into the high-tech industry. First is gender equality. The nice thing I liked so much at the ceremony when Remy, all your team came up, all women. It's amazing. This is how we should proceed. I think in high-tech there is about 20% women, maybe 30%. In high school, 50% women learn mathematics. Why come in high-tech only 20%, 30%? This is a big issue that we need to solve because women are more clever than men. I can say that clearly, right?
So we don't understand you guys, still we don't, right?
So this is one thing. The second is sectors, the Arab sector, the ultra-Orthodox sectors. Each has its own challenges. Now, the ultra-Orthodox is lack of relevant education. The Arab sector are cultural barriers. We need to work on this because then we'll have access to much more talent than we have today.
Yes.
I think this is critical for our growth in the high-tech industry.
Yeah. And last question, very briefly, one that you've never been asked before. What's the best advice you can give the CEO of the new technology company or a computer science student who has just started his academic year?
So my advice to a student is, take the tough courses. Don't optimize your GPA, grade point average. Because in the long run, your GPA would not matter. What you would be measured is what you can accomplish, and the kind of courses you will take will determine what you could accomplish in the future. And in the future, no one will care about your GPA. So this is my advice to a student. My advice to a CEO is train yourself to see through the clouds. If you do that successfully, all your other deficiencies would be forgiven.
Professor Amnon Shashua, thank you so much for this inspiring talk.